Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 6th session of this Audience Academy. We're almost done. Actually, next week is going to be the last one. So thanks to everyone who made it to the 6th session. Today, we're going to talk about measurement, specifically tailored to audience. So you know me, I'm Alessia. I'm a search audiences EMEA lead. And today, I'm really proud to introduce you to my best colleague. We've been working together like in the same role for the past 9 months. So Tade, if you want to say a few words about yourself and why you love audiences so much.
How's it going, everyone? Just a quick introduction. So my name is Tade, and I work as a search audiences product and sales activation specialist here in EMEA. My focus is primarily on search audiences, but I'm also involved in other audiences like display and YouTube and so on. So I cover a wide range of products, and the reason why I'm going to talk about measurement today is not because I'm a, let's say, specialist on measurement, but we're using a lot of measurement to help us talk about audience products, especially those that are not that are a bit harder to measure and prove the value of. But yeah, otherwise I live in Dublin. A couple of personal things that I love doing is just filmmaking and surfing. So, if we ever get a chance to interact, I would love to talk about those two topics. So,
and the fact that you shouldn't be wearing stripes when you are on camera. I know it's pretty disturbing. Sorry, I didn't think about it. So anyway, try to look at the slides, don't look at me. So just to give time to everyone to join the Hangout, just review last week's survey. So again, we had a lot of answers. So thank you. Just remember that you need to fill out all the surveys every week. You have time until the week after, so Monday, to fill the forms. So we asked you, when you are expanding your display strategy, leveraging on Google data, for example, in market audiences, you should ideally have separate campaigns with a different ad group per list. This is actually true. Just remember the tree that Anna showed us last week. Feel free to go back to the presentation if this isn't clear. Just like you might know, but on the website, there are the videos and presentations as well. There is only one display auto-targeting option available. This is false. We have two, conservative and aggressive. And then we asked you custom affinity audiences. They allow you to insert keywords and landing pages to create your custom audience solutions. That's actually true. So you can use both landing pages, so websites, and keywords to create your custom affinity audience. All right, so what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk, as we said at the beginning, about measurement. So it's important for you to know why measurement is important for your audience strategy. So we are aware that many of you might already be working on audience. So we're not going to tell you maybe anything new, but the way we're going to phrase these is to allow you also to have really good selling points with your clients when you are trying to explain why it's important to spend a lot on time on measuring and then attributing with Google Analytics or other measurement solutions. So it's really, really important. We are going to kick off and introduce measurement with a narrative that you can reuse with your own clients as well. We're going to go a bit more in depth in Google Analytics audience reports. And then we're going to see how you can give the right value to your display strategy using macro and micro conversions, analyzing assisted conversions through Google Analytics. And then we're going to go and check analytics attributions report, how you can use it, what's the best way to use them. So I'm going to leave this first part to Tade, which is going to explain us measurement narrative, how we can explain to our clients why it's important to measure and how you can measure your audience better with Google Analytics.
Sure. So I guess a lot of you here in the room, well, not in the room, but behind your desks or wherever you're sitting right now, are quite aware of the technical aspect of Google Analytics, right? So different reports, different metrics, and so on and so forth. But one thing that I want to spend a bit of time on today is, how do we explain to your clients, essentially, right? How do you explain to your clients why measurement and attribution is important, right? So what I'm going to take you through is now to, a couple of things that will help you justify your client's investment in measurement and attribution. So to give a bit of a context, there was a really nice piece of research which was done, if I remember correctly, back in 2015, right? So there was a research where we asked, where actually eMarketer asked the executives in Europe and US, what is the one area where they feel like they should double down on their investment, and it's going to be the most important competency, right? And 43% of the executives were saying that, in fact, that's going to be analytics and big data, right? And I think, let me just say it again, that was back in 2015, right? When not a lot of companies were thinking about measurement and attribution, right? So you can imagine that this skill is now even more popular, and the companies and your clients are going to be asking for it. So I think what's going to happen in the future is really three things, right? So one is, your clients are going to start hiring people from that have big data and analytics expertise. That's number one.
Especially when we go towards automation of, for example, your AdWords campaigns.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So less micromanaging micromanage less your AdWords campaign and focus more on attribution and measurement. It's super important.
Yeah. So that's number one. And then the other thing is they're going to be focusing more and more on training and upskilling their employees, right? And the third thing is obviously they're going to be increasingly more hiring agencies that not only have a technical expertise in advertising, but especially in big data and analytics. And I think this is very important point. Now to move on, one other reason why measurement and attribution is important is primarily because this helps you think about the entire consumer journey, and help your clients unlock new growth opportunities, right? What I mean with that is, the measurement attribution helps you essentially look across your entire selection of channels, right? And decide, where do we have a good ROI, where we don't have a good ROI, where should we double down the investment? So it helps you, go to your clients and say, hey, I think display campaigns are doing a great job in terms of, assisting the conversion. Let's make sure that we really, increase the investment on a display, or perhaps, organic or any other channel, basically, right? So that's the other reason, right? Then the third reason is, and this is why we're here as well, from the audience perspective, is what we've seen a lot of agencies really struggling with is, explain to their client why is it important to invest in mid and upper funnel campaigns, right? Why? Because we're very used to measure everything based on, direct conversions, direct transactions. And if there's a campaign which is a bit more awareness oriented, right, or a bit more consideration oriented, we tend to freak out, right? Yeah. Because we don't know, what's the right way to measure, what's the right attribution model to use, and and so on and so forth. So I think attribution is the first step of moving from purely search campaigns, performance oriented, to a bit more mid and upper funnel.
Yeah, and I think especially for audience, right? Because through this academy, we moved a lot from remarketing as audience, because remarketing is really performance oriented, but it's not the only audience solutions available we have, to opening up to expansion. We saw how you can use in-market audiences, affinity audiences to open a channel. Probably those campaigns are not bringing you a conversion today, but they're opening a channel. They're making your brand, your products known to someone that will convert through remarketing later or through a search later, right? So really important when you talk about audience to have a clear attribution in mind.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very good point, yeah. Cool. And then the other piece of information which is really interesting is when eConsultancy asked a bunch of advertisers, is there a correlation between, sorry, not a correlation, but do you feel like there's an impact of investment in measurement and attribution on the ROI, on the overall ROI? 72% of the advertisers were saying yes, there's a positive impact on ROI and budget. So I think this is very important. Why? Because measurement and attribution essentially helps us make smarter decisions about how your clients are spending essentially their dollars. So yeah, so this is a couple of rationales that you can use when you talk to your clients. Obviously, there's many more, but these are just some of the really high level things. So what we're going to use for the sake of this training is a very simple, let's call it framework that you can use whenever you have a conversation about measurement and attribution. Okay, and it's essentially a 3-step approach. It's called measure, attribute, and act. Okay, it's not only in the context of audiences that you can use it, but in any other instances. So measure is pretty much about getting the basics done, right? So making sure that if you have a website that you're measuring, things like site visits, conversions, different goals, different micro conversions. Attribute is then going a step further, and it's saying, okay, we're measuring everything, but now how are we proving the value of different channels? How do we know that YouTube campaign is bringing, is assisting in conversions? How do we know that display campaign is assisting in conversions, and so on? And then act is about using all the data, all the learnings that we have, and basically incepting that into our decisions around, bidding, targeting, budgets,
automation.
Exactly, around smart bidding, automation. So today, for the sake of this presentation, we're going to focus on bucket 1 and bucket 2, measure and attribute. I know you spoke at one of the other webinars about automation already, so we're not going to touch that part that well. And to give you a really practical example of measure, attribute, and act is if you imagine, let's say you have a major or a small online retailer. The measure would mean hey, my Google Analytics code and Tag Manager is installed on the web page. I'm measuring the clicks, the conversions, the site visits, the bounce rate, and all that. I enabled e-commerce tracking, right? If I'm a retailer, attribute would mean looking into assisted conversion reports, attribution models to decide, which channels are performing well and which are not. And act would mean, taking that data and deciding on budget and bidding, right? So if there's one campaign which is performing well, that's great. Let's double down the investment on that campaign. So when it comes to different, Google Analytics sometimes tends to be very complicated. Maybe not so much for you guys because you interact on a daily basis with Google Analytics, but for your clients that might be, quite a black box. So it's
difficult to explain it in an easy way, even if you know about it.
Yeah. So what Alessia was saying, like super difficult to explain in an easy way what analytics essentially stands for. And an easy way to explain them is to use this ABC type of bucketing, where we bucket different reports into audience, acquisition, behavior, and conversions. So audience report, they tell you different things about your audiences, like what their demographics are, what their interests are. Acquisition reports tell you things like what channels are they coming from. Behavior report, they tell you pretty much about, how much time do they spend on your website? Did they bounce off? What's the percentage of them that bounced off? And conversion is about things like transactions, goals, attribution models, and so on. So these are the 4 reports. We're going to use them later in the presentation. So we're going to go through a couple of them. All right, so let's get into a bit more of a specifics. So we're going to talk about audience reports, okay? What are the different audience reports in Google Analytics that can help us make audience decisions? And the easy way to access this in Google Analytics is when you go to the reports, you have a section called
Audience.
Audience, yeah, it's very simple, straightforward. And the reports that are, I think, essential are obviously demographics, interest, and behavior. And one thing that I just want to call out that I forgot to mention is the reason why analytics is super important to look into is because if you only rely on your AdWords data, right, you're missing a whole lot of information, right? So analytics is obviously compiling data from all the different sources, not just AdWords, right? So it's super important that that you also look into analytics data, not just AdWords. So let's look into individual reports. So the first one we're going to look into is the demographic reports. I think everyone is super familiar with this report, so I'm not going to explain, what does it tell you. But one thing I really want to call out is that first thing that I think it's super important is obviously it tells you the split of transactions and sessions between the different demographic groups. But even most important than that, I think, is look into the things like, what are the trends over time, right? Is there a certain demographic group which is perhaps growing faster than another demographic group, right? And I think this is a very good example here, the screenshot that we have on the presentation, which is saying that the demographic group between 18 to 24 is the second one, but in terms of percentage of the sessions, right? So I think they deliver around 75% of the sessions. But when you look into the revenue, they're actually one of the smallest one, right? And from the audience perspective, what this tells you is, right, that perhaps we should either focus on a different demographic group, right? Perhaps we're getting a lot of visits, but when those people are comparing different products, they might not be deciding for us. Maybe they're deciding for someone else. So
maybe
perhaps
our ads are not the right one. We're like attracting people from the wrong age bucket that then will not convert.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Maybe ads are not the right one. Targeting is not the right one. Maybe our remarketing campaigns should be fixed, and so on and so forth. One important thing to know is demographic report should only be a starting point.
Absolutely.
I'm seeing way too many clients only relying on demographic data and making decisions on age and gender, which is fine. It's a good starting point, but you have to go beyond that. You have to look into things like interest reports and so on and so forth. The other report is then the audience behavior report. So the audience behavior report, what pretty much tells you is what is the split between new versus returning visitors, okay? So new visitor, someone that hasn't been to your website before, to your client's website before. Returning is someone that obviously was already, right? And why this is important is, to give you a very concrete example, let's say you're give you an example of a business.
Well, I don't know, clothes or shoes. Okay. Or
let's say you're a clothing company, right? You have a website, you're selling clothes. Now, if you get a lot of, if the overtime trend tells you that the new visitors are declining, right? Even if you, for example, if to your website, if you get 60% of the new visitors, but over time they're actually declining, okay? That's a clear signal that, you're only recycling the existing users, right? If you see that over time, for example, new visitors are declining. On the contrary, if you see that the returning visitors are declining over time, let's say year over year, that's a clear signal that you're not bringing those previous visitors back. So a clear set of action for this kind of scenario would be that if new visitors are declining over time, it's a clear signal that business or your client has to focus more on mid and upper funnel campaign to bring more new visitors to this clothing company, right?
Yeah.
And to build awareness with them.
And it's impressive how from such a small report, you can get so many insights. Yeah. What you can also see is that, for example, if your returning users are converting more than new users, it means that we've seen that it's pretty typical. 96% of users visit a website at least twice before converting. Yeah. So that's normal. So you should invest more in your remarketing campaign. So really simple report that tells you so much on your investment choices and investment errors or investment opportunities, if we kind of want to call it like that.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. It's basically telling you, hey, where the investment choices should go. Should they go more in re-engagement, so remarketing, or should they go more into awareness and consideration campaign?
Or both.
Or both, yeah, exactly. Good point. Cool. So then the next report, which is, I think it's heavily underutilized, is the affinity and in-market report, which again, you can find in the audience section. And what this report tells you is basically two things. One is, what are your audiences, your website visitors, your client website visitors, what are they interested in? And second of all, what do they have intent to buy? So, what are they planning to buy? And one thing I would really like to call out here is that the way these reports are generated is that we're using in the back the machine learning algorithm by Google, which is helping us, based on the browsing behavior of users, classify them in different categories. And why this is really helpful is because if you're building a display campaign or a YouTube campaign, right, this report can actually help you select those categories, right? So you can, pick those categories and then include them in a targeting.
And these are visitors of your website, so it's a bit different from the Audience Insights report of AdWords, where you have data on people on your remarketing list. Here it's more holistic.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter the channel of acquisition of your users.
Good point. Yeah, really good point. So you can add the targeting to your campaigns. Another use case that I've seen a lot is agencies using this report to describe customer personas, to make the profile of the customers. They tend to use a lot of this data to explain who their client is, who the end customer, is, and kind of help them describe the segments. So this is the interest report. Then another piece of advice that I would suggest to you is whenever you look into other reports like device or conversions, you can always add a segment on top of the existing report, right? So this is just an example where we added a returning visitor segment on top of the existing report. So you can perhaps go to goals, and then within goals you can figure out, okay, what is the split of conversions between new versus returning visitors, right? And you can do the same basically with devices or with any other segments. So this is an example, for example, how we narrowed down drilled down new versus returning visitors based on devices, right?
Yeah, it's really important, because then you could see, for example, that, I don't know, on mobile, you might have a lot of new users, but not returning. What it means, maybe people know your website through mobile and then go back through desktop to convert, or vice versa. Super important to try to go just beyond what you see and take insight, combining reports and making strategic conclusions out of that.
Yeah. So I had an example with one of our agencies, and what they did is they first identified what are their top demographic groups, so gender and age. And what they did then is they used demographic data to filter all the other reports to figure out what is their top affinity, what is their top in-market category, what device they're on mainly, what are the channels that they were entering their website through, right? So for those top performing so demographic segments, then they drilled down for every single report, and then the outcome of that was a really nice description of their customer persona, essentially. Okay, so moving on, I think this is your part. I'll hand it over to Alessia.
So how do you give the right value to your display strategy? So to each of your display campaigns, of your audience campaigns. So there are two ways to measure your upper funnel activity. So Anna mentioned in past session upper funnel a lot. So those sessions that are kind of bringing those users to your website that might not be converting the very first moment they visit your website, but might become your clients in the future, maybe through a second or third session. So two ways. Measure your micro conversions, really important. We're going to go through what it means, and analyze the assisted conversions, second part of this section of the live stream today. So first, let's focus on your micro conversions. Identifying the micro conversions on your website and measuring them the right way. So macro and micro conversions, what it means. So, we said that in the first and second session of this academy, 96% of users visit a website twice before converting at least. 79% of your users will leave the cart before converting. So might place an item in the cart and then convert maybe the day after. It's something that happens to every one of us. 49% of them visit 2 or 3 websites before converting. So what we try to say here is that the purchase, the last step of your conversion, the purchase, subscription to a newsletter, if that is your ultimate goal. So anyway, the ultimate goal of your marketing campaign might not be the only thing that you have to focus on. There are actions that your clients are taking on your website that might be important because they are assisting your conversion across time. So for example, if you are selling clothes, and of course your macro conversion is the purchase of clothes online, then maybe subscribing to a newsletter of your website that gives 10% discount to your users on the first purchase, that's also a micro conversion that you need to track, because it's an action that brings user closer to the final step, to the final conversion. So first thing, identifying what is your micro conversion. So next to the purchase, what else do we want our user to do on our website that means that they are closer to the macro conversion, and how do you track them? Through analytics goal, to events and stuff.
And I just want to add that we're quite underestimating the value of micro conversions.
Yeah.
And to give you an example, a very common thing that, for example, retailers are forgetting about is add to shopping cart or add to wish list micro conversion, right?
Yeah.
Add to wish list essentially means that person was interesting. They've shown a clear want.
Yeah.
They want to buy the product, exactly. And I've seen so many websites not measuring that as one of the micro conversions. Now, again, micro conversions, are not necessarily, like in ideal world, we would measure everything in using assisted conversions and attribution models. However, we still suggest that you always have, some sort of micro conversions in place. For
exactly, because the macro conversion is your ultimate goal. That's fine, but again, users are not seeing your website and converting straight away. So that's why we like to talk about this framework that you see here on the slide. There are campaigns that are kind of making you reach the goal of C. So being aware of the fact that your website and your brand exist. Then there is a second step when people start to think about that website as a potential website from which they would buy, for example, their new pair of shoes. And then there is the conversion itself. So I will buy my shoes from that website. And then another step, another layer, which is care. I like the service that website, or like the product that website is selling, and I will buy from the website in the future again. So your audience campaign should be structured with these kind of objectives: creating awareness of your brand, make your user think about purchasing from that website, and finally purchasing. And again, your micro and macro conversions will kind of reflect this kind of path. So here is a fake website, a mock website that I created, and it's like a vintage clothes shop. So what could happen, for example, is that visiting the website itself, for example, for the first time from a new user, that could be already a micro conversion for you, right? If you track your website users, your on-page users, you're tracking those who are at least aware of the fact that your vintage clothes shop exists, because they have been on your website already at least once. Then they might want, as Tadej was mentioning before, to add one of your products, for example, the first jeans that we see there on the left, to their favorites. So they might not be wanting to buy them today, but maybe tomorrow. So to remember that they like those pair of jeans, they will add them to the wish list, to their favorite items. And that's already a micro conversion that you can track through Google Analytics goals or through events goals and so on. Also, signing up to a newsletter to get a discount. That's also a micro conversion that you should be tracking. Why it is important? Because there might be campaigns, like a display campaign, that is not creating directly a macro conversion, so a purchase, but is creating a lot of micro conversions. Adding to the cart, super important. If someone is adding an item to the cart and maybe coming back tomorrow, that's also a micro conversion. So they're not purchasing, but they are kind of thinking. They're in the think phase of buying from your website. So here, this is just a slide to give you a few ideas on how you can track the micro conversions according to the see, think, and do steps. Feel free to steal from it, but be creative. Talk with your clients. Try to understand what their ultimate goal is and also what is bringing that ultimate goal. Which are the intermediate steps that someone is taking on a website to get to that goal?
I think you almost have to kind of dissect the end goal and really like reverse engineer, right? So if the end goal is the purchase,
what happens before?
What happens before? And always ask what happens before and before and before and before and before you get to the very final answer.
Yeah.
Now, we're not suggesting that you measure every single micro conversion, but that should be the logic behind. Another good example is for the client to invite a few of their customer and ask them, okay, if you were about to buy the product or do some action on the website, what would you do?
What's your journey as a user on the website? Yeah. Really important, right? So put yourself in the shoes of the user. Think about yourself as customers on a website. Talk to your clients. Don't measure everything. Don't get crazy about that. Have clear in mind what's your do goal, what's the final conversion, and try to track at least 4 or 5 micro conversions. They will give the right value to all your campaigns. So your clients will not tell you stop investing on in-market because it's not bringing any real conversion. It's maybe bringing a lot of micro conversions, and it's maybe assisting a lot of macro conversions, as we will see in the next slides. If something is not clear, again, you have the chance to ask questions on the right, and we will try to answer more we can at the end of this session. If something becomes too complex, if you also want to track engagement of your users on the website next to micro conversion and real actions on the website itself, feel free to use SMART goals. There are 2 use cases. We suggest to use SMART goals to those users who are not advanced enough to have a conversion tracking system in place, an e-commerce in place. So they're really early stage of the digital marketing strategy, even if our advice is also always to start from measuring. Yeah. So measurement should be the first step in your digital marketing campaign. If that's not possible, at least analytics SMART goals can help you, because they tell you if a client is valuable or not based on the behavior of the user on the website. Second, a user case, you can use this as a complementary tool to your conversion tracking system, e-commerce tracking system. Again, to evaluate the level of engagement of different users on your website and on your sessions.
I think it's a very common scenario, especially for those of you that work with a lot of smaller clients, is that the volumes of conversions are not big enough, right? So let's say you have a local plumber, or and they only have they have a form on their website, but that form is not likely to generate a lot of volume. And then SMART goals are a great way to basically have a good enough volume that still explains you the performance of on your website.
Because it tells you how valuable that session is compared to others through machine learning.
Yeah. And we've actually seen, and on this example, so this is a SMART goals report. You can actually see that the person that was put in the bucket of the SMART goal converter, so the conversion rate was 20 times higher, if I'm not mistaken, or 22 times higher compared to
the rest.
Yeah, compared to the rest. Yeah. So I think it's a good indication. Again, in a ideal scenario, you should have more detailed goals.
But you can use and combine the two. So again, here a few ideas. So how does this translate into audience strategy? Here is a few ideas. So now you can use all the different audience solutions that we have studied and talked about during this whole academy to achieve your awareness goals, consideration, action, and loyalty goals. Again, this is not one fits all. As you can see, the same kind of audience fits into different stages. Depends really on the use that you do of it, but try to keep this in mind and make sure that when you think about your audience strategy, you have clear in mind all the audience solutions available. You have a conversion tracking in place that follows this kind of objectives, and you use the right audience solution just straight away. So we said there are two ways to measure the value of your audience strategy, of your upper funnel audience strategy. First was micro and macro conversions, and then analyzing assisted conversion. What do we mean? We mean that, as we said, people visit your website more than once when it comes to before converting, right? It means that they might have reached your website through different ways. So today I see your display ad, and for the first time I click on the ad and visit the website. So I wasn't aware before of your website, and I'm aware today. Tomorrow I have a remarketing banner that just comes on the right of my screen. I click on it and I start to think about buying, and I place maybe one of your items into the shopping cart. And tomorrow, I just type the name of the website just because I remember it, and through an organic search, I get into your website and finally purchase. So what it means that, or for example, I don't know, I see, I do a search and I click on a search ad and purchase. If we just think about a last click attribution model, then what it means is that the search campaign gets the conversion, and that's it. We just lose track of the display campaign and the remarketing campaign. But I'm actually the same user. And the only reason why I know your brand is because you have a display campaign that made me discover that brand. So it's important that we know how many final conversions, macro conversion, that display campaign that opened the channel assisted. If we get rid of that display campaign just because it's not creating straight away macro conversions, we might lose a lot of clients. People like me that wouldn't have known your brand otherwise. How do we do that? Super simple. So first, have in mind, this is pure digital marketing, so I won't spend much time on it, but have in mind all the different attributions models that we have. Last click is the most typical one. It means that we are attributing, well, we are kind of giving the credit of a given conversion to the last step. So in our example before, the search ad will get the credit of the whole conversion journey, and the poor display campaign wouldn't even be mentioned.
Which is often the case. Like,
which is often the case.
A lot of campaigns look brilliant when you look at the last click. They they look absolutely amazing, right?
Yeah.
And then when you shift to a different distribution model, you actually see that, hey, there was a bunch of other campaigns that were actually helping out. And yeah, we see that as quite a common thing.
In our example before, it took me 3 steps to convert: display campaign, let's say affinity, then a remarketing, and finally, I don't know, a search ad. If we only look at the search ad was amazing, and the poor display campaign didn't do anything. But actually, if you really want to get to the right number of clients, you need to measure the entire journey. So keep this in mind. Last click, first click, time decay. So giving the credit of conversion according to the time of the purchase cycle and so on.
Yeah. We're also getting a lot of questions like, what attribution model is the best?
There's no answer to that, right?
There's absolutely no answer. Like if you're a bit of more, if you're just kind of going through the stage of, last click, and you kind of want to go to some sort of attribution model, maybe you can start with time decay, but it would be wrong for me to suggest that.
No, we said at the beginning of this session that the value of attribution is in the comparison of these different models. So if you just focus on one of those, you're missing on a lot of data and a lot of opportunities. And again, the display campaign, if you just focus on, in our example before, on the last click attribution model, you can say, okay, I'm going to stop investing in the display campaign. But actually that conversion wouldn't have happened without the display campaign. So it's important to compare, and the value is in the comparison itself. And this is how you can explain it to your clients. So this is an example that we really like and that you can absolutely copy when you talk to your clients. So it's the best example. Think about a football match. And you're a football coach, right? So this is more or less your team. You have a goalkeeper, you have people playing in defense, and then you have the strikers that are probably those who are gonna score the goal. if you only value player that scored the goal, so our search campaign in the example before, then you just have strikers. Doesn't match with strikers only make you win it.
In fact, I think you usually end up with like one or two players that are scoring most of the goals.
Exactly.
And then the rest
so what about the rest? They're useless. They're not, right? They're part of the journey to the goal itself. And this is the last click attribution model. We just look at the striker. We don't look at the rest. And if you only have players who initiate all movements, would you end up just only with the goalkeeper? So again, if we just get rid of the, for example, if we just look at the first step in our example before, we will give all the credit to the display campaign, and the poor search campaign at the end wouldn't get any credit. So this proves again how comparing different attribution model is the right way to give the right credit to your campaigns.
And what I think this slide is like super powerful is because we tend to go, agencies tend to go out to the clients and they just flood them with technical expression. Yeah, it's the first attribution, the last click, the linear attribution, and they just throw all the possible terminology at them without actually, making the story very simple. Yeah, exactly. And I think football analogy is very simple. You have several other examples, but make it very simple for them to understand, especially if they're not skilled in attribution modeling.
Because what they might do is just go into analytics, see that your affinity or in-market campaign is not bringing you any final goal and say, I want to stop investing in it. And they will miss maybe the biggest bunch of conversions in the future, right? So feel free to use this example. I think it's a perfect one. They won't have any objection later. So which kind of reports you can show to your clients or you can use yourself for analysis when it comes to giving the right credit to conversions, to your display strategy and overall marketing strategy. So we like to start from the top conversions path. Why? It's a report in analytics that you can see there in multi-channel funnels top conversions part in the conversion section of your analytics account. This is really, really simple report that you can use to see what's the journey of your users before converting. So again, there might be people that come to your website through, as like exactly my example before, 3 different channels: display, remarketing, search, or display organic remarketing. This gives you a clear view on what's happening before people convert, how many times they come to your website, and which is the journey that they follow, and which is the channel that opens the session every time. And then we like to go a bit more in depth and look at the assisted conversions report. So again, in my example before, we came to the website for the first time through display, then through running market campaign, then through remarketing, and then through a search ad. It means that the search ad kind of generated the conversion, but the display campaign, the remarketing campaign, were assisting the conversion. So what is really, really important is that you also check the assisted conversion report. It will tell you how many conversions a given campaign created in a last click attribution model, but most importantly, how many conversions that campaign assisted. So why it is important that you don't get rid of it if it assisted a lot of conversions, but didn't finally close many of those. And you can explain this easily to your clients through the assist ratio. So if you see that a given campaign is assisting more conversion than it is closing through a last click attribution model, your assist ratio would be more than 1. Right.
In fact, what we're seeing, just to kind of go back, is that oftentimes in case of display campaigns, that is the case, that the assist ratio is more than 1. And yeah, whenever you have like mid or upper funnel campaign, you have to check assisted conversions.
Exactly, because like, as we said with Anna last time, like we're using in market to make someone know our brand when they are in the process of purchasing exactly what we offer, but probably from our competitors. Sure. So we're making the people know about our brand probably that person will convert later through remarketing, which is super performance oriented, and it's not upper funnel.
Yeah.
But we need to consider the upper funnel and give credit to it as well.
Yeah, sure.
And this is exactly what Tade was explaining. So we tend to kind of undervalue the display.
Yeah.
Again, this is a slide, I'm not going through it, but like make sure you have a look at these. It shows exactly what Tade was saying, that sometimes we tend to underestimate the display campaigns because they have an assist ratio which is really high. They're not closing conversions, but they are a lot. They play a huge part into creating the conversion path itself.
I think a really important, if you just slightly go back to the previous slide, is when we change the attribution model from last click to a non-last click, we see that display and YouTube actually are giving a much higher credit on average by 109%. So this is a clear indication, and this was the research that was done across a lot of different advertisers or accounts around the world, and it's a clear example that most of the display and YouTube campaigns are underestimated, undervalued.
And again, the value of measurement and attribution is again in the comparison, right? So what we are trying to say is that when it comes to deciding how to allocate your budget, if you need to get rid of one of your campaigns, think twice, right, before doing that. You could get rid of campaigns that are creating the conversions, but that's not visible if you're just looking at a last click attribution model.
I would actually say both, if you want to get rid of the campaigns or if you want to increase budget in a certain campaign, right?
Exactly.
You want every single decision, regardless, if it's one way or another, to be justified with the metric, right? Not emotionally driven.
Exactly. Another really nice report that we like to see is the time-lag report that shows you when the conversion happens. So how long people take in terms of days before converting from their first visit. And well, in this example, they convert the very same day. This is really important, especially I think for your remarketing strategy and for the length of your remarketing list. So you might want to focus on shorter length of a remarketing list if the purchase cycle is quicker, and longer if it's longer. So keep an eye on these as well.
Just one thing I would encourage you is that you always change the conversion window.
Yes.
Because we heard a lot of feedback that, hey, most of the conversions are happening within the same day. Change the conversion window and you're likely going to see a change. Now, again, most of the conversions are likely going to happen within, day one or day two, right? But what we often see is that still 15, 20% of the conversions happen beyond day one. So really try to expand the conversion window and you should see a difference.
Exactly. And that's also really important not to forget about your recurring users. So it's true that we are thinking about see, think, and do, but you remember we also had a care. So there might be people that you want to upsell to. So again, custom and match. Use all the audience solutions that you have available.
I think this one is really good for remarketing. I've seen some examples where some clients were making a one-day remarketing list, which I thought was quite a good. Again, that was a bigger client, so it's a slightly different story. But yeah, it's a very good type of report for remarketing campaigns as well. Yeah.
And again, we said from the beginning that the value of attribution is the comparison. So you can compare how attribution, so how the credit to the different campaigns change when you change the attribution model. So it's not a permanent change. So you can feel free to use this kind of report and change the attribution just to see how the different conversions are attributed to different campaigns. Feel free to use it. It's not going to change anything permanently. So we have 10 minutes to answer the questions. So I will just go quickly through what we said today, the main takeaways. We'll just introduce you to the next session next Tuesday, the last one. And then we will we'll try to answer your questions live. So what we learned today. Analytics is as simple as an ABC. Tade explained it perfectly.
So you have 4 major reports. audience acquisition, behavior, conversion. That's why it's called ABC. That's why we called it ABC. We talked about that audience reports are mostly about who's your demographics, what they're interested in. Acquisition reports, it's about, hey, what are the main channels?
How they
got to our website, exactly. Behavior is mostly about, it's, device, it's new versus returning. And then conversion is things like, e-commerce, transactions, and so on. Exactly, sorry. Attribution models, assisted conversions, and so on.
Then we kind of gave you a lot of selling points and like reports to focus on to correctly evaluate your audience and display strategy. You need to take into account the micro and macro conversions. So start to think holistically around your user journey on the website. Create micro and macro conversions that track that, and give the right value to all your campaigns by comparing different attributions model, by checking your assisted conversions and assisted ratio.
I think my main advice here would be the good answer for what attribution model to use is everything but less click. Right. So that's the first step. So try to really get away from that. It's not the right way of measuring things.
Exactly. Compare.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not so much because we feel like the display campaigns are doing an incredible job, which they are, but it's mostly because the customer journey has changed dramatically in the last couple of years, right? So by giving credit to one single channel, it's very unfair from that point of view that we're no longer searching, we're no longer just seeing one ad and buying products straight away.
We are comparing, we are returning.
Exactly. Yeah.
So really important. And I think that the main the main value of this session is that you really now have a good overview and a few simple selling points and tools that you can use to attribute the right way in a really complex word, or at least a word that seems really complex, like the measurement word. All right, so we're gonna go through your questions now, but before, please do not forget to fill in the survey. You need to complete all 7 surveys to be certified as audience product experts. So please feel free to fill it in. It just takes 5 minutes. You don't need to give the right answer. Just try to answer. In the next sessions, we're going through the questions and giving you the right answer. So really try to give the right answers. If not, doesn't matter. We are reviewing them together. In next session, it's really exciting because we're going to talk about programmatic. So this new way of seeing display advertising. We're going to have Damien with us. It's a really, really good expert on programmatic. It's really valuable for you, I think, to know about programmatic because it's something new. It's something that is coming. So it will give you a really good competitive advantage in your daily job, in your career, if you have a few elements to understand what programmatic is. So make sure you attend. It's really, really, really important. All right, let's go. We have I think 7 minutes to go through your sessions. If we don't make it to the end of all questions, doesn't matter. I will answer them in the presentation before uploading it, so you will find it. So first question, Antoine, is there any way to split demographics by network? I think so. I think that if you create segments on the top, so I've shown you, right, how to...
What do you mean? Like the question is perhaps a follow-up. What do you mean exactly by network? So are you referring to like display network, like, search, or
maybe operator,
or are you referring to the operator?
I got the question as like operator, but anyway, whatever it is, go on the top of the reports, of any reports. We showed you how to add the returning user segment, but it's not the only segment that you can add. You can create your own segment, of course, if there are data in analytics that represent that segment. And you can
search or display. Okay, we got an additional information. Is there a way to split demographics by network? Yeah, sure. So you go to segments, and then what you essentially do, you select create new segment, and then you select. I believe there's a source.
Yeah.
and you just change the source to, search or display campaign. In fact, you can pick a specific campaign
as well.
That you can figure out the demographics for. So
that's really important. So there are a few segments that are already made for you, and others that you can create. So if you don't find your own, just try to. Really, analytics is something that you learn by doing. I also don't remember everything by heart. I need to go into the account and try to do stuff. Feel free to do it. Whatever you do in segment is not permanent. So you just remove the segment and it goes away. So
perhaps I also want to say, I know we talked about analytics, and it's slightly unfair that I go now to AdWords, but if you only want to know specifically for search and display paid AdWords, PPC campaign, you can also go to AdWords. You have a demographic tab, which is now reporting and working both for search and display. So you can also see the data there.
Yeah.
If you specifically want to see for paid traffic.
If you have set up multiple micro conversions, can you see which one has been the most effective towards gaining macro conversions? So this is Callum. Yeah, I think that the main thing that comes to my mind here is analytics goal tracking with funnels. So what happens is that when you create a goal in Google Analytics, you can also create different steps into the goal itself. So let's say that you want to see what happens when people convert. So your final goal will be that the person has seen the thank you page. So that would be the landing page of your goal. Then you can put funnels in the middle. So for example, you want to check if the person has seen a given product page, has added the item to the cart. So you can add those funnels into the goal, and then into the goal report, goal funnel report, you will see where people are dropping. So if they are dropping, for example, so if they are not converting after they have put an item in the cart or after they have seen a product page, and you can create as many goals as you want with different path towards conversion. So that's the easiest way that comes to my mind to track that.
One thing I just want to add is, so in an ideal world, to see the connection between, in ideal world, you should be using assisted conversion report and attribution models, right? To see the correlation between a campaign which was more awareness oriented. There's no report that would, explain the correlation between micro and macro conversion. But like you were saying, there are a few reports like you were just saying, where we can kind of see where were the people dropping off, and then we can potentially say, that there's a connection between a micro and macro conversion. But there's no clear report which will say, hey,
these micro conversions is better than another one. Exactly. But you can infer the conclusion of creating different goals and creating different goal paths.
Yeah, sure.
So, can any of today's lesson apply to search and shopping campaigns?
Yes,
of course,
sure. Yeah.
Of course. So you have seen in the conversion path report that we've seen together, you will have insight on the fact if the person came through a shopping campaign and then a search campaign and then maybe a display campaign before converting. You can apply returning user segments to shopping campaigns report as well.
And I just want to say, just because it's a search campaign can be also mid-funnel. You can have generic keywords, right? So, the same principle will apply. If search campaign is very generic, if we go back to the clothes example, and let's say that your keywords are fashionable outfit, it's not going to be likely that you're going to have a lot of last click direct conversions, but they might assist in the final conversion.
Exactly.
Another lesson that I see applying to search, and specifically RLSA or remarketing list for search ads, when you change the attribution model, what you will generally see is that RLSA will be given less credit. Okay, and much more credit will go towards other campaigns. Same goes for shopping. Attribution modeling and assisted conversion reports. Again, they're very relevant for shopping campaigns as well.
So attribution measurement is something that you can apply to anything in a digital market, and that you have to apply to anything. It's a starting point. We have a last question from Hector. Having an e-commerce with no display or YouTube campaigns, only AdWords search, which is the attribution model that will work the best? Let's say, maybe I would say the last click,
So
probably.
I wouldn't suggest any attribution models. Like first of all, for display, I suggest you reach out to your account manager because we have certain betas which can help you report impression-assisted conversions. I don't want to suggest any attribution model, but I would say everything except for the non-less click is the answer.
So it really depends. It's true. Like less click will make you see what is the last step that like brought you to the conversion. But again, maybe you have search campaign that opened the channel, the conversion path, and then people are coming back through organic, or they're coming back through another mean, like for example an email campaign that you might have, and that poor search campaign will lose all the attribution. So again, maybe there is no right answer. The value is in the comparison itself. Feel free to compare. I think we ran out of time, so it's time to say goodbye. I hope you enjoyed this session. Please fill in the survey, don't forget, and I will see you for, the last time in this academy, hopefully not the last time forever. Maybe we'll do other kind of activities and sessions together, hopefully, next week. So thank you, and goodbye. See you next week.